Welcome back, everybody. On this episode of Corner of Crenshaw, we're gonna have a very interesting discussion about parenting. When you get married, you have an idea of how you want to raise your kids. Then you get married and you meet somebody who comes from the opposite end of the spectrum, and then you have to kind of collaborate and raise your kids in a way that suits you both. And in this day and age, we're really, really in a generation where gentle parenting seems to be the goal. And for me, it's a very interesting concept because I wasn't gentle parented. So today we're going to just have a conversation just about how we have come to some kind of understanding for a level of gentle parenting. So I want to start off by asking you, like, what do you think is a challenge for you as you approach gentle parenting?
A challenge for me approaching gentle parenting is not parenting gently from the basis of my childhood trauma.
Okay.
Um, just remembering and reminding myself consistently that my children have not gone through the things that I've gone through
Mm-hmm.
and they haven't experienced the things that I have, so their needs are different. But it arises a lot for me, and it's a constant or a lot of intentionality, if you will, where I have to remember that they aren't children who've been abandoned or who've been neglected
Right.
or who've been abused. So, in my approach to parenting them, I have to make sure that I'm conscious of my own triggers and trauma
Mm-hmm.
and separate that in my approach to discipline, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's very interesting because a lot of times as a parent, you approach your children from one or two concepts. Like, I'm going to treat you based on my experience, or I'm going to treat you better than I was experienced or how I was treated.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, like, I wasn't abused or anything like that. However, I remember there was a point in my childhood where I said, I'm never gonna treat my parent or my children like this. I'm never
We
gonna
all
do this
said that.
to my children. And as I grow up, I find myself as a creature of just, replicating what I've experienced, treating my children how I was treated. Um, so it's a very interesting concept because, like you said, our children don't have the same
Mm-hmm.
experiences
Mm-hmm.
as we did, and they don't live in the same time
Yeah.
period as we did. They didn't have to experience some of the challenges that we had to experience as children. So it's very interesting. I know my challenge as a gentle parent is just having the balance of discipline and restraint. And when I say discipline and restraint, there's a level of aggression that I exude with discipline that subtracts restraint. Like,
What do you mean?
when I say it minuses or it subtracts restraint, there's no cutoff to my aggression. Like, if I'm gonna be disciplinary, I'm going all in, and I have to stop and say, does the punishment fit the crime?
Mm-hmm.
Just because I'm like, stern and I'm like, it has to be this way, it has to be that way, you have to do what I say, not understanding the just the nuances of life, if that makes sense. Like, everything ain't gonna be
Yeah.
how I say it is, and kids have a mind of their own.
Yeah, given that leeway
Yeah,
for
yeah,
them
yeah.
to be able to share how they feel and contribute that. I know that that's some differences that Brian and I have,
Yes.
because I'm always like, I want to let the kids speak. Like, I'll say, da 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 da, and they'll reply, well, that's not fair. I lead with curiosity. I try to lead with curiosity. Why don't you think that's fair? Well, he got to do X, Y, Z, and I didn't. I'm not going to take away their voice. It doesn't remove what I'm going to do, though. Like, I know for me, literally, I didn't get my voice as a person, as a woman, until
Mm-hmm.
clear into my 30s,
Mm-hmm.
which it was a challenge just in my matriculation and my maturing, not getting my voice till then. I was a pushover in some wises and made some really poor choices because I just was never allowed to really verbalize how I felt. And I think that in parenting, and this is just our how we parent our kids, it's
Yeah.
not right or wrong.
Right.
It's what we're still figuring out
Mm-hmm.
what works for the Crenshaw household. So let's put that caveat out there, but just really letting them speak, hearing what they have to say. But something that I learned from Brian is, that's good and all, but there are times when we have to tell them what to do and we need them to do it and ask questions later. If they're running in the street and we're like, come back or stop, we can't go through, well, why? Because I said so, it's a car coming, like we don't have time to do all of that. So just balancing that. And I think too, I wanted to contribute to when you were like without restraint. It's just, y'all, we're believers, and I'm telling you, I don't see how anybody parents kids without the Holy Spirit.
Absolutely.
In this day and time.
Yeah.
And that's not to make it spooky or anything like that, but you literally have to rely on, some people call it intuition if you're not a believer, but like you have to rely on just your parental antennas, if you will. We call it the Holy Spirit. It's just like sometimes you have to know when to put the law down, when to be lenient. And it's not even inconsistency in that. It's just, to me, that's how the kids learn that it's not always anything.
Yeah.
And this time I have the time to listen to what you want to say. But if we've had a conversation and established a standard, then we're going to start holding you to that. And I think that that's something that he and I level set it on, because I'm a brand new parent. We have a bonus child. She's 17. So Brian has been in this game for 17 years. I'm knocking on 7. Like, I'm just happy to be here, right? So there's things that we're learning, and even him having a child in 2007 and then us having a child together in 2016 is almost a 10-year span. People often say kids, it's 80 kids. It's crazy we're talking about parenting and I have one of 80 shirts, right? They just don't make kids like us now. I mean, it's just a different era. And just really taking into consideration those things, our kids can pick up an iPad or an iPhone. And, my daughter knows how to unlock my phone, take pictures and selfies. One day she showed me something that I didn't even know my phone could do.
Yeah.
So how we are approaching parenting is with that consideration. And I also wanted to say this, and then I'm going to give it back to you. This isn't to vilify our parents or to say anything was wrong with how we were parented.
Absolutely.
It's just our decision to parent intentionally in a certain way, with just mindful of the things that we've matriculated through and overcome, and how we want to just kind of set them up to succeed, to have a voice and to have boundaries, but to also be able to defend themselves and to, have positive self-esteem and things of that nature. So, yeah.
And it's interesting that you say, like, we're not vilifying our parents, but, we are all trying to figure out life. And we didn't even understand it as children that they were trying to figure it out. And it's just an interesting journey. Like, I was actually talking to my daughter last night as I was playing the video game with my son. And it's like I've become the old guy. I remember like trying to teach my father how to play. At the time, it was Nintendo 64, and my dad was completely lost. And I'm like, well, if I can get it, why can't you get it? And then last night, I realized that my son was teaching me stuff at 6 about a PS5. And it's just interesting that things that we don't typically understand a lot of times, we kick against. And I'm not against the whole, the kids should explore outside, or the kids should, pick up a trade, but I'm also understanding that children have resources.
Mm-hmm.
You know, children have resources, and if I can cultivate their intelligence by way of their resources, I'm going to do that. And I think that's the new approach to parenting. A lot of what we wanted to experience, their fear wouldn't let us experience.
Yeah.
I remember certain things that I couldn't experience as a child because of the fear of my parents, and it wasn't that they were scared of. I guess scared for them. They were scared for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were scared of what we would experience, and I think we as parents need to do a better job of just letting that fear go and letting them explore. And we never know what they'll come up with.
Yeah.
You know, again, I'm not vilifying my children for playing with iPads because they may grow up to be the next software developer, or I'm not going to vilify my children for wanting to get on an iPad and blog or vlog, whatever they call it. Yeah, like so. This is sidebar. We're driving down the road one day, and Addison has her tablet, and she's just talking and talking and talking, and I'm driving, and I'm like, who's she talking to? She is vlogging our journey, and she's like taking videos out of the window, and I'm realizing now that children are becoming wealthy with their natural talents. And so I think just as parents, while we're trying to figure out that thin line between discipline, I think it's important for us to know that some of this we have to kind of like just let happen, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, and again, this is not to vilify. Just very briefly, my mother had me at 16. My father was in the military, so my childhood was very colorful, and we'll just leave it at that. However, I remember just really wanting to be heard as a child. And because of that, I think within going to therapy and just balancing, I want us to be in, we've kind of level set to the place. And when I say level set, let me say this. We have two totally opposite experiences. Brian was raised in a two-parent household, and he's almost a second generation
only
in his sibling lineup. There's 11 years between him and his brother, right? So he was the baby. So when you're the baby, and your parents are, how can I say this, on the older end potentially, you kind of get more liberties, if you will, right? My mom had me at 16, so she was still a baby herself. And I remember just wanting to be heard. And I know that I'm very adamant, and Brian gets on me about this, because our children are very, I don't want to say smart mouth, I'm going to say they're very educational mouth, right? They get that from Brian. I'm telling you, he's really quick with his mouth. Like, I admire it. Because for me, I'm quick with my fingers. Like, I can come up with it in text message. Don't battle my thumbs. Like, I got you. But in person, sometimes, like, it doesn't come out that quick-wittedly, right? And because of that, I'm often caught off guard.
Mm-hmm.
And I really try to intentionally, like, balance that, and again, lead with curiosity. And then we're talking about this whole gentle parenting thing, because how we were parented was, do as I say, not as I do.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's very antiquated. This is my opinion. I'm not antiquated. I'm not vilifying anybody else. It's very antiquated, and it doesn't make sense. People learn by what is modeled in front of them. Adults do. We're both people leaders on our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's hypocritical to do one thing and expect them to do another. Now, I know as adults we can do some things differently, but our kids will ask, why can you have ice cream after 9 o'clock and I cannot? Just different things like that. And we were raised,
because I'm grown.
Right, but that's not a good, because they're going to be like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because we're both adults, not adults, we're both humans. So we try to lead in that way, and we try to respect our kids. And I know that I've gotten pushback from a lot of my older, aunties and, older friends and people that I look up to, it's like, that's a foreign thought to them because it's not their experience. And I want to ask you, Brian, I know a lot of times we disagree and we have to level set, if you will, like
Mm-hmm.
really have a conversation. And in those conversations, I'm grateful because it causes me to think
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that I'm not running this through my trauma tube, if you will.
Yeah.
And
I
then it
like that.
causes
Trauma
you,
too. I
yeah,
like
because
that.
I think a lot of things aren't necessarily wrong. You just gotta test the motive.
I'm gonna preach that.
You better give me credit.
Oh,
But
buddy.
it's kind of like it's the thought is not wrong. The notion is not wrong. It's just the lens in which you look at it through, and we'll bounce things off of each other. Especially the whole talking back piece or them asking questions because he was the one that posed to me. If they're in the street, Alexis, what we gonna do? Have a conversation? If somebody's breaking in the house and they ask what's going on, we're gonna do have a conversation. We can. So it really just caused me to mold, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I want my children to have a voice. I want our kids to be able to know that they're respected and heard, but it's a time for
Mm-hmm.
everything. So my question to you is like, what are some things that you feel like we've had the level set on, I guess, and that I've like positively influenced you in? And talk about from your perspective, just raising Bree, you had her at I think 16,
17.
right? 17,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then just the difference in your approaching. I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna shut up. I know a lot of grandparents parent because grandparents assist you in parenting, but they're able to be, the
They're
good guy
yeah.
because they've experienced raising their own kids. And I know for you, like you had her for 8 years, and now you have almost a second generation of children. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
How's that experience been for you?
It's very interesting. For one, I wanna answer your first question. Like, what are some things that we've had to level set on? I think to start that whole knowing when to ask questions and when not to, and it's almost one of those things you don't know until it happens. Like for example, we went out to the fireworks.
Oh, yeah,
We went out to the fireworks last year, and they were playing a trick on, and somebody started popping off fireworks in the midst of the fireworks. And the crowd thinks it's gunshots. And because of where we live and how gun violence is insanely widespread, I've been on alert, obviously, because there was a time, was it last year or year before last?
Year before last.
Year before last, I was actually in a public place and a shooting broke out.
Yeah.
So like, for one, already my nerves are like really shot when it comes to like public places. But I've always been aware of my surroundings just because of how I was raised. So anyway, long story short, that particular incident, I had to manage my entire family in an instant. We're in a crowd of over 10,000 people. It had to be every bit of 10,000 people out there. And I mean, people are running crazy. And I have two very young, inquisitive children who are trying to ask me questions as to why we're running. And so in that moment, I can't explain to you why we are exiting at this fast pace. And so I use that with Alexis as a learning opportunity. This is what I mean when I say there are moments when they cannot ask questions. So it's one of those things that you don't know until you know. But again, I had to learn that because with Bree, I didn't have anybody to kick against that.
Buffer it.
I didn't have anybody to challenge that perspective because it was me and her. It was extremely helpful that my parents were there to support. However, a lot of what I was taught by them.
Yeah.
And I was taught that by my mom, who was a military baby.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, who was in active military. My mom would tell stories about how my grandmother in the middle of the night would pick her and her three sisters up and tie them together and move because they were just told they had to get out that night. And I'm talking, they were little, 4, 5, and 6, and they just had to move. So that was their way of life. But I didn't have anybody to kick against that, you know. So it's very not challenging. It's very interesting actually, and eye opening to watch how I've raised Bree, and then watch how I'm raising Addie and Junior. It's I don't regret anything, but it opens me up to be more self aware. And I have a lot of conversations with Bree now, like, yo, my bad. Like, I'm sorry.
That's so good though.
You know, I'm like, yo, my bad. And I know because I'm very intentional about them all developing a relationship and just building a very strong relationship. So I know there are times when Bree is like, well, you didn't do that for me. And I have to own that. I'm sorry. I was 17. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. If I would have had you at 27, we would be all right. You know, if I had you at 30, we would be all right. But, you know, it's just a matter of me being self-aware. So
I think that's huge, for you to be self-aware enough and healthy enough to own that and say that.
Thank you, therapy.
Because I've had seriously, because I've had to in therapy resolve that, and that's crazy. My mom had me at 16, and you had Bree at 17. I never put those together, but resolve to forgive my mom of being a 16-year-old, 17, 18, 19-year-old, because she was literally a kid. But I had to resolve that on my own. But you're giving her that. And I want to say to you that is, you don't regret it. And I respect that. But that's still some level of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, resolve. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it will hopefully help her to have a level of acceptance with that. Also, what I want to kind of hit on is, and hopefully this kind of lightens the episode, and probably we need to conclude soon, but like, how do you see yourself in your children?
This is why gentle parenting is a challenge for me, because I know me and I know how I was. And
what does that mean?
So my son is a spitting image of me, personality wise. Like, he got it.
I often say that Brian Jr. is the most purest, innocent, haven't been through anything form of him. His heart is just to die for it, and that's the heart that you have. But
I've gone through life, but sometimes my son says things, and like, it really just makes my stomach boil. Like, it really gets tight, and I know I can't really say anything to him because in my mind I'm like, ooh, son, that was good. So, boy. But I am really trying to, again, lead with curiosity.
Good.
Because everything that I did wasn't bad. It was just misguided, and I didn't have anybody to open my mind up to allow me to explore what it was. Now, I would say the first thing that come to my mind, if you stunk, I would tell you stunk. Like, if it was something, when they say kids say the darnest things, that is a very true statement. And I see so much of myself in Brian Jr. and I want to correct it again because nobody corrected me. you know. And we were talking the other day just about parenting through our trauma tube. I like that. God, I'm gonna use that. Like she, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but she has a level of protection because of her trauma, and I have a level of discipline because of my trauma. I can count on one hand how many times I've gotten a spanking in my life. You know what I mean? And it wasn't that I didn't deserve them, but I just know that one, my daddy is not gonna spank me. If I needed anything, Bishop Milton Crenshaw was not gonna spank me. If I did anything, my dad was gonna he might have yelled at me, but he was not gonna spank me. And I used the fact that my mom traveled a lot to get over on the fact that I know my dad ain't gonna spank me.
Yeah.
So by the time my mom got home, the incident was already over, so she's not gonna spank me a week later, you know. However, I'm realizing that if I was spanked, there were a lot of things that I would not have done.
Yeah.
You know, so I lead like that trauma of not even being abandoned, but almost feeling forgot about.
Yeah.
That trauma of, like, does anybody see me?
Yeah.
I'm over here cutting up and don't nobody care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't want them to feel like they can get away with murder, because when you get out in the world, they not gonna look at you like, oh, you just young.
Yeah.
You know, so I lead from that level of trauma. So I'm really trying to, just as a mature, self-aware, healthy man, understand the balance of the two.
Yeah.
What about you? Like,
so we have a boy and a girl in the house, and Addison is just
you,
Alexis 2.0. She's spicy. She's sweet. She'll serve it up. Like, she gives her brother the blues. You hear me? But the moment I get on her, it's tears, and I'm just like, where's the spice go, sis? But that is me. People think I'm mean. In high school, I was labeled as having RBF. I think you know what that is. And I've been in one fight in my life, and that was as an adult. And people never really mess with me because of my disposition.
mm-hmm.
So I look like I don't take no, or I don't take no smoke. Is that, no? I said that.
They don't want no smoke.
They don't want no smoke. But I'm really sweet and I'm really kind. I don't like drama. Mm-hmm. And if you are a drama-filled person, I'm probably going to shy away from you, just because I just don't like it. It makes me nervous. It gives me anxiety. My daughter is the same way, but she's very sweet and kind. And the challenge with that is that I see myself in her so much, and I really try to lead with curiosity with her, but that's how you and I level set. I basically, in that, I will we'll have the conversation. We're not gonna do this. We're not gonna keep doing this. You know what I'm saying? You don't get to keep being mean for no reason. Because I can also be a little moody. Can't believe I just told y'all that. Ooh, so it just depends.
There's freedom in this
I'm free. Freedom, psycho. So in that, she is the spitting image of me. However, I wanted to speak to just my childhood experience. So Brian can count on one hand the times that he was beat or spanked or disciplined in that manner. I don't have enough limbs or appendages to calculate the times that I was disciplined in that way. Mm-hmm. And it would be for breathing sometimes, right? So because of that, when Brian is aggressive or assertive with the children, I'm like, well, what did they do? You know, does the punishment fit the crime? You know what I mean? Like, can you have a little grace? You know, if you're having a bad day, don't take it out on them. Like, I'm just like topping off, because what you're not gonna do is parent your own kids. And that's what I had to realize, like, whoa, Lex, like, you carried them but you couldn't have carried them if the man of God ain't put the seed in there.
Hallelujah.
Pray for him. These are you all's kids together, and they need to experience both of our healed perspectives to cultivate them to be great members of society. And even in that, we're working on ways for him to support me, because this is the thing, health has to be maintained.
Has to be, definitely.
I can be healthy today, but if I'm not doing, I feel like therapists getting my reps in. I mean, you can see I lost 100 pounds and I gained a good majority of it back because I wasn't disciplined. So he supports me in, like, I don't know if you saw my stories the other week. Brian Jr. was told to get in the bathtub 3 times. And I wanted to be like, get in the tub. But the Holy Spirit was like, Lex, no, go get his dad. And me and the Holy Spirit, I was just like, really? Like, because it ain't got to be like that. But I had to. But I told Brian, I said, I can't be here while you do what needs to be done. So guess what I'm finna do? I need you to go get my bonnet and get my cardigan that my mother-in-law made me, and I'm gonna sit in the truck. Now, whatever you feel like needs to be done, please do. But I can't handle it. It was real rap. And I went and sat in the truck. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm okay with that, because I don't want my children to be brats. You know what I'm saying? I don't want our kids to not know that you just can't do what you want to do. And that's the kind of phase we're in now. But just to kind of bring it all full circle, we're figuring this out. Our parents were figuring it out. You know what I mean? And I want to encourage you guys, no matter where you are, if you have a blended family like us, or if all your children, are from your marriage, to come together and have that conversation. Because we didn't at the beginning. And then there was some issues with that, because he was 8 years in the game, and I'm just like brand new and just happy to be here.
And then I kept approaching it like, well, why don't you know? And then why don't you listen to me? Like, I'm trying to tell you what I've already experienced. Why aren't you listening to me? And like, I just think, again, you gotta have that conversation. Without conversation, there's no understanding.
In any subject, on any subject, like that's a stream in everything that we're sharing with you guys. Communication is key, because you can't read each other's minds, or assume. He assumed I knew, and I didn't think I was going to be able to birth children, yet alone have a boy and a girl. Thank God. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's just important that you have that conversation and that you revisit it, because I had made up in my mind already that gentle parenting was our way, and he hadn't said nothing to the man of God. And he's just like, well, what are we doing? And I was just like, well, what do you mean? Assuming that because I'm posting it on IG, and sharing stuff with him.
I'm so glad you brought that up.
Oh, God.
So it's funny because she'll never, like, I won't say never because that's extreme. She will very rarely have a conversation about that with me, but she'll find something that supports her stance on Instagram, and she'll send it to me like, what? I don't care what what they doing over there. They don't have these kids. They don't have these kind of kids with these kind of problems. But I understand her presentation, and I do understand as a mature, healthier man that everything that I want to do ain't right. Same. And so it's just something that we dialogue with. And then we add another caveat to our story. They're preachers' kids. They're pastors' kids. And we're gonna dive into that. We're gonna dive into that one day. But they're pastors' kids, and they're going to have to be raised, or they're gonna be raised and they're gonna be viewed from the disciplines of our calling. You know what I mean? They're going to be judged based on the disciplines of our calling. And I think that's something that we need to just understand. But again, that's going to be another conversation for another day. I just want you guys, whatever parenting style you have, it needs to be a conversation. There needs to be a level of understanding. And moreover, your parenting style is to benefit the child and not you.
Ooh, that was good.
You have to know that the needs of the child cannot be the expectations based on your trauma or your fear, because your child will experience something that you've never experienced. Your child has the opportunity to see the world. Your child has the opportunity to be something that you may never have thought of. And if we as a generation, or we as a culture, will bind our children based on our fears, we never know what they can become. And neither will they. But I'm loving our journey that we're on, the gentle parenting journey. Just FYI.
Thank you for saying that.
I am. It's hard work, but
it is.
I'm loving it.
It is. Two things I want to say. Number one, parenting. Nothing about parenting is convenient. And parenting requires, just like any relationship, sacrifice. And our thought is that these are gifts that God has given us, and we want to be a good steward over those gifts and parent them how God is leading us to.
Absolutely.
Even because we want, and we have adopted a gentle parenting perspective. Even some things in gentle parenting that doesn't work for our children and their personalities. So we are taking from it what we want to, adopt and implement. But we also have some authoritative, streaks in there too. We just have figured out what work. Yeah, he does. I could be a little. Never mind. We have figured out and still have a working definition of what works for us. And that's what we want to encourage you to do, to have a conversation outside of the kids, because they will try to play you against each other. But we don't peep that, and we don't got, we got each other's back in that. But have a conversation about what works for you. It's going to benefit the children, or what's going to benefit them the best.
But thank y'all for hanging with us.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next week.
Next time.